Hello, everyone. It's Matt Moshe. Welcome back to Product for Product. Thanks for tuning in this week. We are excited to have Henry Latham on the show to discuss various topics from his journey in product management to developing your own career in product. So welcome to the show, Henry. Thanks for joining us. Let's take a sec to introduce yourself before we start.
Perfect. Thanks for having me, guys. My name's Henry Latham. I'm founder of Prod MBA. I've had about 10 years experience in entrepreneurship, failed business, a couple of successful businesses, and spent about 8 years working as a product manager all the way through to head of product. And as I said, now I'm founder of Prod MBA, which is really a hands-on training program where we get students to actually build a real product, and in doing so, learn the 4 key competencies of effective product management.
That sounds exciting.
Yeah. Hey, Henry. Hey, Matt. Thank you for joining us on the podcast. This does sound very interesting. And my understanding from reading about it and talking with you about it before is that you actually give people hands-on experience on how to do product, where if I compare it to other programs, it's less theoretical, it's more hands-on. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't want to obviously spend the whole episode talking about it, but I think it's really important to understand why we approach our product in a certain way, or why we approach training product managers in a certain way, because there's so many key learnings for whether you're an aspiring product manager or existing product manager looking to skill up. And you can go and read all the books you want, and there are some great books out there, right? Marty Kagan is an excellent author, as is Melissa Perry, Escaping the Build Trap. And there are some really good theoretical courses, right? You can get some really good stuff on Udemy for $10. You could even go to product school and you get a sort of decent foundation. And any experienced product manager knows this. Product in the real world is very far away from the theory. It's incredibly messy, and it can't be distilled down to, hey, go and do a Scrum certification, watch some videos, do a nice little quiz at the end of the 2 days, and you're a product manager. It's not magic. Product management, as much of it comes down to the personal foundation that you're laying, right, in terms of your mindset, how you can deal with uncertainty, how you deal with adversity, how you can detach yourself from your ideas and your ego at times. It's as much that as it is the frameworks and principles and nuances of applying, these different frameworks and principles as well.
Yeah. And our podcast is always focused on products. So it's more about the some of the tactics or the tools that we're using to actually get there. But you're right. I mean, it's also about mindsets and personality traits that we almost have to either forget or develop or things like that. Going back to the products and from your experience and working on these programs and helping, I assume many aspiring product managers, I think you mentioned also, product managers already on the job, but don't have the full experience. What type of, advice would it give them to do? And then with that advice, what type of products would you advise them to maybe look into or try or use in that process?
Yeah, so I'll deal with the first question. There's so many things you can do. As with anything in life, there's so many things you can do, or paths you can take. Usually there's one thing that really moves the needle. Always comes down to just go and build something. The amount of people I see just paralyzed by inaction, or hesitating, spending months deciding whether they do a course or read this book, or whether they should, is product management going to be the right path for them? You're not going to know until you do it in the real world. And product management is not about the management side of things, right? We sort of think of management as, it's all about managing people, right? I need experience managing a team in some way. Obviously, that is a really important part of it, as is managing upwards to stakeholders. But you're going to get a huge amount of experience going and building something, right? Because you have to work out, rather than going into a product management role and somebody more junior might just be focused on execution. You're going to build something. One, you have to be strategic, right? So you have to understand what vision is, what strategy is, how you can validate strategy rapidly, how you can really then inform what a solution might look like that's actually going to be valuable and has people using it and ultimately buying it. And I think the second thing, again, coming back to the mindset stuff, having this comes from, my first business, for example, failed after 2 years, had no experience, but also just made every mistake possible, right? Decisions driven by ego. We thought we knew everything. We thought we knew exactly what our customers wanted. We didn't have process. We completely lacked strategy. We didn't really understand what metrics to apply. And so going through that psychologically difficult journey of building something in the real world is incredibly powerful, because you can't hide from reality, right? Even if you've got the biggest ego in the world, if you're the most arrogant person ever, if you put a landing page up and you get 0 people signing up for it, then it's quite hard to ignore that after a while. So the advice is always go and build something. You're just going to learn you're going to learn the fundamentals of what really product leadership is, right? How you can operate on a more strategic level.
Yeah, that's really exciting, because I myself have been in the process of building my own company, and kind of pivoted recently, hoping to produce my own product. So just starting out as a business and trying to have your own landing page and trying to get people to come there and click on stuff, and just seeing how people interact with it. It's been a real iterative learning process for me. But you're right, you have to do it. I come from an analytics and data background. And in academia, there's very clean data and everything's sterilized. But when you get out in the wild and you have to do it, it's like, oh my gosh, I had clean data sets. I've never seen dirty data. I've never seen dirty data.
Exactly.
And people freak out.
Yeah. And it's the same thing of, you read about like data analytics, or, there'll be a webinar or a talk online that's like, here's how Google does analytics by product manager at Google. It's like, that's not how the world operates.
Yes,
that's
exactly.
not the kind of thing you're going to be doing.
Yes.
You don't have clean data sets.
No.
You don't have a unbelievably rich data. You don't have, custom built data management tools that you're using artificial intelligence, machine learning to sort of inform what you might do as an autonomous product team, right? That's just not what it's like.
Yeah.
And on the other side of things, only when you do things do you understand nuance. So I take the example of, the MVP. The amount of people that talk about MVP that have not actually understood what the fundamentals are, right? MVP in most cases, firstly, people haven't read the book, Lean Startup in most cases, but secondly, they're just, everything's an MVP. So it's like let's just do an MVP. Well, what does that actually mean? What they really mean is they're going to build a not very minimal and not very viable version of a product, right? It's just a shit version of a product. Sorry, excuse the language.
Oh, it's okay.
Whereas, so what do they end up doing? They immediately go, well, we're going to spend 3 months building a digital solution, an app. We need to build an app. Actually, what is the point of an MVP? It's not. It's to really get an answer to a hypothesis we have as quickly as possible. You can usually do that without any coding and for free, right? Landing page, no code prototype, these kind of things, or just do it manually, right? Get someone on a sales call. Yeah. So, again, we throw around all of these words and phrases, go and do these things. And you realize pretty quickly, oh, I get now why they talk about experiment rather than, digital solution when it comes to MVP, because it took me 3 to 4 months to build this thing that nobody actually wanted. It's these kind of learnings that
exactly
you only get by just, putting something out there and just the real world coming back and punching you in the face.
Yeah, they'll give you feedback, right?
Exactly. And I think coming back to Moshe, your second question around what kind of products should people work on? It's a really interesting question, because it doesn't actually matter. The principles are the same. So, this podcast is a product, right? There is an offer that you put out there. There's a promise of transformation that you're giving people, right? Around, in some way improving themselves as product managers. And that's the really important thing, because, we can come onto the process in a second if we want to really dig into the details. But if you cannot get the value right of a product, right? So understanding who the target customer is specifically, what they want on a high level, right? What's that ideal scenario they're looking for, and also understand what their current frustrations are, right? And belief systems, then you're going to be very unlikely to understand actually what do we really need to build here, right? We don't want to ever jump to, say just, I've got this app idea, I want to build it. Yeah, that's going to be helpful. You're going to build some digital skills. You're going to understand, particularly coming from a non-technical background, you're going to understand a little bit better, well, how does an app work, right? What's a database? What's an interface, right? These sort of fundamentals. It's going to help you when it comes to execution and managing a team. But if you're building the wrong thing, it's a waste of time, right? Whatever you're working on. Yeah. So understanding that value and what is our strategy? How do we validate that strategy? And how do we then inform what kind of solutions we might work on when we understand what the customer really wants from us? That's the really big, important stuff. And that's the things that are going to get you hired. right? Yeah, you could go into project management to apply for a project management role, some product management roles where they just want to see experience with execution. They want to see a technical background. They want to see you've got a Scrum certification. But good hiring teams are going to look for smart, strategic problem solvers, right? So again, doesn't matter if you do digital, podcast, consultancy, whatever it is, but going through that whole process of understanding who we're trying to serve, what they want, and how we might deliver value, that's the thing that's really going to move the needle for you.
So what do you think actually get people stuck and not starting it? Is it do they think their idea is maybe not so good, or do they think, oh, they need all of this money or time or specific tools to build things up, and they don't have the skills for that?
Yeah, it's a great question. A lot of conversations I have in week one. So students that come in, we give them onboarding of like, how do you generate an idea? So first learning is, hey, don't come in with a solution, right? We're not interested in that. We want to understand what's going on in a market first. Right. Look at it from first principles. Week one, everybody comes in like a rabbit in the headlights because they've been tasked with coming up with lots of ideas. And then week one, we're gonna zoom in on one, which I do on a one-on-one with them to say, okay, here's a problem space that I see potential in. I think that'd be an interesting one for you to go and explore. Right. So say it's, Matt's come to me with an idea. Most people are just scared of failure, right? They're scared of uncertainty. They're scared of simply reaching out to random people. Right. So again, what do we do week one? It's really a Trojan horse because we're getting them to validate an idea by going off and doing discovery calls, but we're also getting them to realize how much they can do with zero money, with just a LinkedIn account or their Facebook profile. And the fact that people are actually pretty open, right? If you're talking about a problem, say Matt's, probably not applicable, Matt, because you look very slim on video, but say Matt's somebody that struggles with, weight loss. If I reach out to him, hey, Matt, I'm just, looking at how people deal with weight loss at the moment. He's not going to be like, piss off, I'm not interested. That's probably a problem that Matt's had for years or decades at times. So simply, even by having a conversation with them, gathering your research, students have this realization of like, oh, wow, just actually talking to people about these things, they're really engaged with it. So it's the kind of learnings that it's that fear thing.
Finding your voice.
Also, exactly. So a lot of what we're doing is confidence building. And again, that's why we get them to build a real product themselves, right? So the individuals building out their own product, because yes, that's not how we do it when we manage a team. It's not how we should do it. But it is really powerful going through that whole psychological journey of, fighting your struggling against your ego when an idea might fail, determining when to pivot or persist because there's no answer to that. And just learning to sort of trust your process, trust the customer as well. And, if you understand the strategy and what's really valuable for the customer, then trust that you're going to work out how you might serve them with a solution, even if the first one or second one doesn't work.
Right. And that's definitely very powerful. So I really like, the points that you mentioned about they are afraid of talking with people, or they're afraid of failure or stuff like that. Yeah. They have to everyone has to go through that to actually realize. And then really, alluding to one of the questions I had about which tools do they use, and they are afraid they don't have the technical know-how, like how to develop software or stuff like that. If it's a digital product, there are definitely a lot of products out there that can help them with that, like no-code products, even like Bubble, or even some of them are free to use. So it's just a matter of knowing about them and stuff like that. So do you also recommend specific products like that can help them build something, and if it requires to build something like that?
Sure. Definitely. Yeah. So I'll start with an overview of the sort of the big steps that we want to aim for, and then the specific tools that we suggest with them. So first thing I'm going to say on that is we've got a Miro template that's actually publicly listed now that I'll send to you, Moshe, to have in the show notes. So perfect. Everything that we talk about, what I talk about when I talk about the process, that's going to be in there. I think a caveat before I go into that process As with the program that we run, we're talking about building a new product, but it's not about becoming a bootstrapped entrepreneur. Building a new product, the principles and processes that are applicable for building something from scratch are also applicable for existing products. There's two key facts there. Well, one fact and one opinion. The first is that 80% of products never achieve product market fit, right? So there's something wrong somewhere with the customer, with the problem they're looking at, with the opportunity, with the solution. So we need to audit products using the proper processes and frameworks. We need to do that methodically to try and take existing products towards product market fit. Secondly, even well-established products, they tend to get quite fatty and they lose focus. So what do we need to do? We need to have a really strong process for realigning even very well-established products around a vision and a strategy, right? So it's really, really important that it's, to say it's not just about launching a new product. The principles are the same. So what we suggest is when we work with our students, we've got this Miro board, and we start with the first board, which is getting them to simply aggregate notes from their user interviews together into common themes. Again, it's a whole different thing in practice, right? If you go and read an article, on user experience and how to discover problems or product discovery, they're going to say, well, you should transcribe it. You should have two of you on that call. You should record it and you listen to it after and you make notes. That's not what happens in the real world because you're busy and you don't want to listen back to the same conversation you just had. So what do? We get you to just write, 5 to 10 for each question, just 3 highlights on a Post-it note. So say, for example, we are dealing with, we're looking into starting a new product and we've zoomed in on, we say tech executives, but we go, actually, okay, well, what's a specific problem they're facing? Maybe it's about time management. So why don't we start talking to busy tech executives? We're going to ask them some specific questions. These are all in the template, by the way, but just as an example, we might ask them about a concrete, challenge. We might say, okay, talk to me about, how much time, your issues with time management, for example, right? What have you tried before that to try and solve this problem? Rather than, recording it and trying to take notes after, as you're going, you're just going to write 3 quick sticky notes, highlighting keywords or phrases that they mention. So if we say, what have you tried before? They might go a journal. They might say a secretary, whatever it is. Right? And what we do is after 5 or 10 conversations, we're going to have all of these nice notes together, but not a mass of them that overwhelms us, which we then simply put into themes. Right. So we say email kept coming up, like, hey, email's taking 2 to 3 hours out of my day. We're going to gather that as a common theme and just label it, right? So email takes 2 to 3 hours per day. That's the sort of collective problem that we keep seeing. On this Miro board, what we then do is we flip that into an opportunity, right? So we might say, okay, well, if email's taking 2 to 3 hours per day, what about making email lightning fast, right? That's going to be maybe our promise. It's about, we're going to save you 2 to 3 hours per day. That's going to be our vision, for example, maybe what we put on a landing page. And specifically, our minimal viable offer, this is what we call an MVO, really the strategy in a sentence, might be something like, we save busy tech executives 2 to 3 hours per day with a lightning fast email app. That's pretty much what Superhuman do, by the way, the email application. What do we then do? Right. So we've mapped that out. We've done our discovery, that sort of, open free thinking thing. Then we're simply going to put that on a landing page. We've tried all of the landing page tools. We use Wix now because Wix is free. You don't need to worry about buying your own domain. You don't need to worry about having perfect marketing, but specifically we'll launch a Wix template. You'll see a screenshot of the template we use in this Miro board that we're going to share with you. All you need to do is add that value proposition statement, right? We help busy tech executives save 2 to 3 hours per day with a lightning fast email service. That's it. You can have an email an email sign up saying, join our exclusive beta list, grab their email. So you can start seeing, are people actually interested? So we use Wix to pitch our offer. We don't need screenshots. We don't need branding. Right? If the value proposition is really, really strong, people don't care about the solution. Right? Solution is not a product. A solution is simply a vehicle for delivering whatever value we're promising them. So that's the first big learning, right? Is what is a strategy? How do you actually work one out from speaking to customers? And then how do we validate it quickly? So we use Wix for that landing page. You can then use simply LinkedIn or Facebook to reach out to people saying, say I add Matt, he accepts. A couple of days later, I might follow up and say, hi, Matt, I'm looking at helping busy tech executive like you save to 2-3 hours per day. I'm doing a little bit of research and would love a quick chat, right? Have you got 15 to 20 minutes? Kick off a conversation like that. See how many people you come through to talk to you or visit the website. If you get none, something's wrong. If you get a lot, then it looks like you've identified an acute problem. It's as simple as that. You don't need a load of tools for it. You could even use automation tools like Phantom Buster is a good one. I don't recommend using this a lot, but say you want to get out to 100, working in an account for accountants, right? If you're looking at that space, you can automate adding 100 accountants based in London or wherever city you're in. And then when people accept, you can start a conversation with them as well. So you save a little bit of time there. Again, you can do that for free. Third tool we'd use there is simply Google Forms. It's free. So when they add their email, maybe you send a survey out to them. You're not going to get many responses, maybe 10, 20%. Just asking a few questions that you might do in a user interview, just to gather a little bit more information, again, to give you a bit more color around who the person is, what their ideal outcome is, what beliefs they might have, and, to trigger also what solutions you might be working on, that kind of thing. So that's how we deal with the sort of strategy side of things. There are other frameworks, right? How do we plot out then a strategic roadmap, right? A lean canvas to map out how the business might look. We use the Blue Ocean strategy canvas on Google Sheets to map out what the competition's doing, right? Because we do need to have an understanding of what the lay of the land is, what the market looks like. Now, when it comes to actually building out a solution, it depends what you're going to be working on. So let's the email example is a bad one, but say we're looking at launching, say our target market is first-time buyers, and we know that they really struggle with the offer process, right? So what happens when you find a property? How do you sort of negotiate all of that? What do you do when you like a property all the way through to actually buying it? Now, we don't need to go and hire developers or be technical to do this. We can use no-code tools. So we always, Bubble is a good tool, but it is complex. It's easy to get stuck. So we suggest using Adalo, Adalo.
Which I believe is also supporting web applications.
Yes, I believe it is as of very recently. Let me double check. But it definitely does mobile.
Cool.
Yeah, I think it does. I'll double check. Otherwise, I'll send another example.
Sure.
We do use Bubble. We have used Bubble before for desktop, but Adalo, super easy, as is Glide. Adalo is very easy. You can drag and drop elements like an image block or whatever it is. You can build a database there. People can input data. You could also use Glide apps, which builds an app from an Excel spreadsheet. Super easy. And so once you've done the most important work, which is firstly understanding, do we have problem customer fit, right? So that initial research of saying, is there really a problem here? Is it acute? Secondly, do we then have offer market fit? So we get that landing page up with our value proposition and see, are people interacting with that? Are they engaging with us? And then thirdly, we want to start towards product market fit, right? So actually building out a solution once we understand what value they're really after. So in that case, again, we use a no-code tool. We usually even start with a Figma prototype. So I can also link this through to you, just a basic Figma templates. You don't need to spend loads of time messing around with designing, making buttons and input fields. You can just drag and drop elements into some screens, and you're going to have connect them up, and you have a prototype that feels very real. Right? So there's no excuse nowadays to say, well, I don't know how to code, or I've got no product experience to launch a full offer that is real offer. You get real people signing up, and then test that out, test what the solution might look like as a Figma prototype, or even better, as the next stage, then a full no-code prototype that works as any app does itself, right? It's got a database, interface, user accounts, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, so those are the sort of core. There are other tools, but those are the core ones that I would suggest. I don't want to overload people.
No, this is really refreshing. It's a refreshing take on the MVP, which can be very abstract sometimes.
Absolutely.
And
again, it's Matt, it comes back to that without having done the strategic work, right? The research, that they're looking at a problem from first principles. It is far too easy to jump to building what you think is an MVP, which is really just a hobby solution, right? It's just something you're really excited about building. Now that's fine if you want to improve your UX skills, right? If you maybe want to learn how a no-code app works, that's fun. It's a fun thing you're going to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
But, if you really want to move the needle, if you want to build something and then get a job after it as a product manager, it's going to be a lot more compelling if you can say, hey, I made some money from this, or hey, look, I've got 100 people regularly using that. Right? That's really what good hiring teams are looking for, right? They're looking for key results, specific results you've developed, as well as the fact that you've pushed yourself and you've put yourself out there.
Of course, but every type of product that we're envisioning and trying to play with might be a failure if there is no market for it, or if we build really a bad solution. But and all of those tools that you mentioned shouldn't really just used by aspiring product managers that are trying to build their own experience. They could be used by any company that has ideas for products or for innovation, and they want to do some experimentation and find the value in the problem, and not just dive into developing a product.
100%. And again, coming back to what I talked about earlier, this should be used for existing products. Most existing products do not achieve product market fit. So what is your job as a responsible, effective product manager, someone that really takes ownership of your product? You need to apply these frameworks, right? If your strategy is not clear, or if it's non-existent, if you don't think your roadmap makes much sense, or if it doesn't feel coherent to you, right, that there's sort of a logic to what's being worked on, you need to go back and do this work, right? You need to say, look, I'm going to forget everything I've done. I'm just going to go and speak to 5 to 10 people in our target customer group. You may not even have a target customer group, but focus in on who let's have a hypothesis. Who might our target customer be? Go speak to 5, 10 people, start mapping out what the kind of feedback that came back was, and then trying to match that with what you currently offer. And another specific tactic that is really effective. So we had a student, Richard, he's one who actually launched a product that generated revenue through the program, but he works as lead PM in a startup in Berlin. And he applied this process. And even within the first few weeks, right, founders came up to him and said, hey, Richard, like, we want to build this, right? This MVP. It wasn't MVP. It was a wireframes of a feature they wanted to work on, or a couple of features. He luckily took pause and said, well, okay, but what do we want to achieve here? Went through the whole steps that I've just gone through now, but rather than jumping to building out a solution, simply sent out a survey to a couple of thousand of their existing users with 7 variations of an MVO, right? So that statement of, we help busy tech executives save 2 hours per day with a lightning fast email app. Sent out 7 of those, got very clear feedback that 3 of the things were really valuable. I can't remember what it was: trust, speed, a few things like that. And then they completely reshaped their whole roadmap based around those 3 things. And that's now what he gets his team to obsess over is, hey, these 3 things are really important. These other 4 are not. Customers don't value them.
So it's just validating the value, not even the solution for that.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
That's a cool take on it.
Yeah.
What do you do for students if they come in and say, I want to get into product management, but I don't know what problems to solve. I want to create a product, but like I find that living the experience and feeling the pain, having the pain in your own life, makes for a good, solution. But
definitely.
Curious what your take on that.
That is a good point, but I think it is helpful because obviously you sort of understand the nuances of it a little bit more. Right. So, it's easier for me to do the validation work and, initially coming up with the concept for the product MBA because I'd worked in product. So you look at the market and see things that other people might not see, if they're coming as an outsider. But equally, I've seen, students do really, really well when they haven't had that problem themselves. And again, what we teach them at the beginning is we want you to come in. We're going to give you ways of generating ideas. So looking at, for example, Google Trends is an easy way to see what are people talking about online? What are they searching for? That's trends.google.com. Again, it's a free tool. You can use ahrefs.com, so ahrefs.com, to see specific search terms around a topic. That is paid, but it's something like $10 a month, or it's got a free trial. So we get them to try these things, but also just speaking to friends and family. And the big learning that most people have is that you're not going to be Steve Jobs. Don't think you are a genius. Don't try and be a genius. Speak to your target customer group. They are going to give you ideas. Again, coming back to that example of Matt struggling with weight loss, if he's been struggling with this for 10, 15, 20 years, he's going to have really good ideas, right? And you're going to see the same keywords and frustrations and sort of, you start getting these nuances of a problem space the more you speak to people that are suffering from it.
What do you say to people that are saying, oh, this was already been solved by so many other people? Yeah. Because that's a lot of the times is is one of the deterrent for maybe I shouldn't really try it because it's already been done.
Somebody's already thought of it, or they failed at it. Yeah. Or something.
I mean, and again, this is something that's relatively unique with us. We don't look at competition until week 3. Why is that? Because big mistake companies make, they start by anchoring themselves around competition and what the competition is doing. So they end up almost always with not really a deep understanding of what the customer wants. They're playing catch up with whatever the competition's doing. So take our example, right? We could look at Product School and go, shit, they've got loads of venture capital and we're a bootstrap company with a single founder and 3 or 4 freelancers and a small community around it. But we do well because we focus on what really matters, which is hands-on learning, actionable learning, and really authentic support for students in the course and also after. So at the beginning, where did those insights come from? That came from speaking to people and looking at the problem space from first principles, right? So just ignoring what's going on in the market and what actually is going on with our target customer. What are the frustrations they're having? Why are these needs not being served? And by doing that, you start seeing coming up with a different perspective to the market. So again, we could have gone, Product School got loads of venture capital. There are loads of other product programs, but we know because we've spoken to a lot of people that there is this one thing they're not doing, and that is converting theory into practice. So if we do that really, really well, and we're clear about that in our vision, and we convert that into a meaningful strategy, and then we obsess over that when it comes to what we promise and what we deliver with the core product, we're going to be fine, right? We just focus on that one thing we're going to do really, really, really well.
So that can go to any other product, so it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. But you're only going to come up with that unique insight if you start from first principles. If you start by just saying, right, you know what? I think accountants, like, what are they up to? What's the problems they've got? Go speak to them. You see, oh, wow, there's this massive opportunity that nobody's looking at because they're all trying to copy whoever the lead player is in the market, for example.
Yeah.
So, and again, that's unbelievably valuable for you long term, because unless you have a really strong differentiated offer, you're always going to be stuck fighting competition. And, Peter Thiel has that famous quote, if I can remember it right, is that every company that failed to escape the competition.
Yeah.
So if you start with that learning, whether you're trying to get into product or, even a senior PM or head of product, if you can really experience that by building a real thing from scratch, from first principles, then it's going to be unbelievably valuable for you long term.
Perfect. Yeah, it will be great if you can share with us all of these products that you mentioned. Some of them we're familiar with, some of them we're not. So we can we will share them with the community, with our audience on LinkedIn through our LinkedIn page. And where can people find you?
Sure. Yeah. So I'll send through all those links, everything that I've mentioned. Best thing to do is just go to prod.mba, and we've got a free mini 7-day email series. It's a free mini MBA where we go into a little bit more detail on some of these topics. You can sign up for that for free on the website if you go to prod.mba. I post on LinkedIn every day about product and my sort of complaints with the product world and some advice at times. So you can follow me. That's linkedin.com/Henry Latham.
Perfect.
Great. Henry, this has been really helpful. As someone myself, as I mentioned, who is building a product or trying to build a product, this has been really helpful and really has me brainstorming right now. So appreciate you joining us for sure.
No worries. Cheers, Matt and Moshi. It's been a pleasure. And hopefully it was helpful for the audience as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.